completely pull. So, what's up guys, DIY Salvage Guy here, and welcome back to another episode of my channel. On today's episode, we're going to be doing some little wiring harness soldering. So we're going to be using some shrink tubing, and we're going to be able to get the wiring harness back together. When the car was in the accident, the bumper basically just broke off into multiple pieces. In order for the body shop, in order to get the bumper off, they kind of just cut it. So my wiring harness is in 4 different pieces, and there are about 8 wires for each piece. So we have 32 wires that we need to solder back together. They're all color coded, so it shouldn't be too difficult as long as I do this correctly. So now this is another one of those skills that's extremely useful, just like the plastic welding, because you guys are always going to have something that is electrical wise that you need to just basically put wires back together. Maybe you need to replace a connector, maybe the tip of it's broken, and you just need to cut off the wires. So don't feel bad about cutting wires or whatever, because it's very easy to get them back together. I'm going to show you guys how to do that in this video. If you guys are new here, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. Hope you guys enjoyed the video as well. If you guys do, please consider liking, subscribing, throwing some comments down below, and make sure your post notifications are on as well. That way you guys can stay up to date on the build and everything else that goes on this channel. To all my returning viewers and subscribers, thank you guys so much for continuing to support me and come back. Also, make sure you guys are following me over on Instagram. I'll post a link down below, because I do post things on Instagram quicker than it makes its way over to the YouTube channel. This is just another one of those skills that I'm learning as I go. Same concept of everything with this channel. Learn as you go with all this stuff, guys. Little by little, you guys will gain the skills of what you need in order to tackle even the biggest types of projects. So, quickly I'm going to show you guys everything that basically is going to happen in this video and the things I'm going to be using. So, I bought these on Amazon. I mentioned that I was going to try to get them at Home Depot in the video, but Home Depot actually didn't have them, neither did Lowe's or anyone else. So, got them off Amazon. So, this is the shrink tubing that we use. So what we do is we put the 2 wires in both sides, and I'll show you guys that. Then you have the solder right in the middle here. And what you need to do is you need to take a heat gun or a torch or a lighter or anything. I recommend a heat gun, and it will melt the solder, and it will go like that. And it will basically just fuse the 2 wires together. So to do any type of electrical work, definitely recommend one of these. It has the different type of gauge wires that you will use. And what this is going to do is it's actually going to cut the wire perfectly right around the shielding so that you can expose the inner wire itself. So what I'm going to do real quick is we're just going to fuse this white wire to this green wire. So we're going to cut these off. You want to make sure that you use the right gauge wire here. So this is 20 gauge wire. So all I'm going to do is put it into 20 gauge and just close it, and it's going to make a perfect cut. And all I have to do is just pull, and now I have the wires completely exposed, perfectly good to go. Same thing on this, same gauge wire. So that's all we need here. I'll do a little bit more since that one has a little bit more as well. But so now what we're going to do is these red ones are for about a 20 gauge wire. So I'm going to twist this a little bit. That way it can go into the coupler pretty easily. Same thing on this. And all we're going to do is we're going to slide it in. Just like that. Slide this one in as well. And we want both of these wires to be right about here. So we have the solder right over both of these wires. So now that we have it perfectly here, we need this to be level. Gravity plays a very big role in this, because when this melts, it's going to spread the way that gravity would go. So in the video itself, I actually make a mistake with it, and I didn't realize that gravity played that big of a role in it, and the solder winds up going only one way. I don't get a good connection, and that's something that I needed to learn. But if you guys are learning this now and watching this, that way you guys can just see it before I even get into that. So I got my heat gun. I'm going to put it on full blast, and I'm just going to hit it. And that's all it takes, guys. You see the solder, it went through. We'll let it dry real quick, but the solder itself, we'll give you guys a close-up in a second once it dries. So, show you guys, now it's completely dry. Still a little hot, but yeah, I'm giving this a yank. So, you guys could see that where the two wires were, the solder is completely covering it, and it works perfectly. So what I would do is I would just wrap this up with electrical tape, but this is just demonstration purposes and I don't need to. But I am. So again, just to show you guys the strength of this. Completely pull. So that's it. So today I'm going to be taking apart the bumper wiring harness for the parking sensors. I mentioned in the past that when the insurance company took the bumper apart, they cut the wiring harness, and to get a new part, even from a junkyard, it's like $300, so it's not even worth really messing with. So what I'm going to do is try to repair that. So I'm going to be taking it off the bumper. So in order to take this wiring harness off, this is one of the parts. This is where it actually connects right into the car. So I have to disconnect it from the side light, the wiring harness for the parking sensor, and also just disconnect this. This will be my starting point. I'm basically going to try to run everything from here, make sure that I can connect all the parts back to this. So just because this is going to get a little complicated and I don't want to be mixing any wires or anything like that. So. Alright, so this is the first part of the wiring harness that is cut. You guys just saw me take it apart from there. So right in here, we're going to do our first wire welds. So we're going to cut this, I guess, tape off. We're going to start with this, and that way we can just see at least how many wires we have or how many we need to deal with. So the first thing I'm going to look to do is cut some of this tape away. You have to be careful here because we don't want to cut any more of the wire than we already have. So we're going to look to take all of this off right now. Use a nice sharp razor blade. So as you saw in the time lapse, I was able to connect all of these. One of the easiest things to do with this is a little bit of a learning curve if you don't know what you're doing. But so this is shrink tubing, And what it does is it actually has a little bit of solder in there. So you heat it with a heat gun and it melts, it expands, and basically just drips all over the wires themselves, and they get extremely tight and extremely strong. So you guys can see right in here and on all of these, we are one step closer to getting this wiring harness back together and back to the way that we need it. So I am running low on these, so I might have enough to do one more run of this, and then I'll probably have to run to Home Depot tomorrow and pick up a couple more. So we are one splice down. So you can see this is one of the wires that was not cut. All of them are good. You can give any one of these a nice little tug and they're not going to come apart. So once it dries, you're pretty much good. What we are going to do is we'll wrap it all up with electrical tape when we're all done, and that way we're good. So one of the other things, the grounds actually come together, and they I guess they soldered them together. So what we did was we basically just made this a little bit longer again so that these two wires come together. And when we get to the wiring harness on the rest of the wiring harness, when we get to basically put it all back together, we're going to combine 3 wires into one. So we'll put this on here, we'll slide this over it, and we'll basically just be connecting 3 wires at once, and that way the ground is back together. I actually don't know if it's a ground. I actually have no idea. It's just a brown wire, so who knows. I believe it's a ground, but I don't really know too much about this. I just know how to do this stuff based on just, you know, YouTube and just listen to a couple electrician friends. So
Alright, so the wiring harness is finally soldered back together. It took an extremely long time. I didn't go about it the correct way. I definitely messed up when I did it because I should have took it apart piece by piece and then put it together piece by piece. I stupidly took it apart and then thought that I'd remember how it all went, and I didn't. So it took me a while to kind of get everything back together. I started splicing wires. I had to get some different wire, had to remember the colors, so definitely made some mistakes in this process, but lesson learned. Did a good job when it was all said and done. So this is the almost finished product. The only thing I have to do is wrap it up in electrical tape, and then I'm going to just test it out real quick, make sure that it works. Hopefully it works. I don't see why it wouldn't, but so you can see it runs the length of the bumper, has a little extra slack in it, so it'll tuck into the frame, and we should be good. So wrap it up, and that should be the end of the electrical work between the wiring harness and also the vacuum pump. So one step closer to completion. Okay, so the wiring harness is all done. We put it all back together. Now we're going to give it a quick test. So hopefully we did everything correctly, and so we're going to see that now. So just for testing purposes, before we actually get to wrapping it up in the electrical wire, kind of just have it just laid out right now. So it's kind of a little messy, but we're testing all the wires right now, testing all of the connections, making sure the parking sensors all work. So before we're shifting into reverse, the backup camera actually didn't work. So first test is going to see if the camera actually comes on. So we're just going to give this a quick start, and I have something in front of almost all of the sensors, so we're just going to test that to see if it actually shows anything. So click the parking sensors. So we have, it looks like we have a fault in one of the parking sensors. So the actual rear view camera is working, so everything's good, but I did just swap these two, the left middle and the right middle, and at first the left middle wasn't working and now the right middle is not working, so we might have a faulty parking sensor. It could be that it's bad. I'm going to have to look into that a little bit more, but everything works good. We are running out of check engine lights to actually have to troubleshoot. Yeah, so continuing the methodology of this episode of splicing wires and just putting them together by soldering them with the heat gun and the shrink tube. So the actual secondary vacuum pump, you can see the connection got destroyed. So the plastic part came off, so what I'm going to do is I bought a new piece on eBay, like $5, something like that, and so I'm going to splice these wires. I started with this one just to check the gauge of it, and I'm just going to reconnect them here. Should be good, nice and easy, should be a pretty straightforward process. Okay, so another successful little solder action. You can give a bit of a pull, staying together nice. Same thing on this one, we're good. So the solder melts together. I guess on these larger wires it doesn't connect as well, it doesn't completely melt, but you know, these wires they're not going anywhere, so I'm happy with that. Alright guys, so today's episode was basically just doing a lot of electrical components. We did the vacuum pump, we made sure that the wires were spliced back together on that. I haven't been able to test that yet because I don't have anything going as far as the HVAC system goes, so that's still a work in progress, but I think that should have been a simple repair. That should all be good. So the second thing that you guys saw me doing today was, it was a large portion of the wiring harness. So as I said earlier, I messed that up when I took it apart. It probably would have been a lot easier to actually do, but no, lo and behold, it took a long time to do, but I learned in the process. So I learned how to solder, so that's something that I learned during the video. I started off, you know, gravity takes a big role in this aspect, because if your shrink tubing is not level, it's when the solder melts, it's actually only going to go one way, and you want it to obviously go both ways. So I actually had to cut out a lot of the initial solders that I did. I redid them. That's what made me use the new wire. So, but altogether, learned a lot. Very happy with this. This car is not going to come out perfect. This is my first vehicle. I plan on driving it for a long time. I plan on using it. So I'm learning a lot in this process, and I'm very happy with that. So please, guys, continue to like, subscribe, throw me any comments, anything that you see that I'm doing differently, because I am by no means saying that I'm an expert in this. I'm looking to learn. I'm looking to share my knowledge with you guys as I do learn, and I just want everyone to be able to do stuff like this on their own and not feel intimidated by buying a rebuilt car or trying to do a project like this. You can do it. There's resources out there.
I hope that I can be an inspiration to you guys, and maybe you guys will try to pick up a wrench, buy a car, do whatever you got to do to try to become a DIY salvage guy yourself.